I'm back from vacation, y'all. Can't wait for Dave to explain to me what the hell went on over the last 10 or so days in Leafland. And then we got a Pierre Engvall revenge game to preview tonight as the Leafs head to the island. Let's get to it.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the March 20th edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. Your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. Be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. Also, check us out on YouTube. That's Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Hit subscribe. We got new content coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. Dave, you held down the fort the last 10 days or so. Appreciate it. Getting the content out to the good listeners and viewers of the show. What did I miss in Leafland? It seems like things are just a little bit different than when I left.
Yeah, just a tad different. We got Cal Yonkrook is just a goal scoring machine right now.
Top line dynamo. Yep.
Top line dynamo. Blue lead to the Sabres, which was a little no bueno on that one there.
Well, that happens all the time. That's no difference.
Yeah, Matt Murray continues to allow a lot of goals, but he did get a win, so that's a positive there.
Carrying the lead. He played. He started the game. He finished the game.
He made a lot of saves.
Made a lot of saves.
He probably needed an ice pack after that game, especially the shootout. Holy, that shootout! And it was a weird time because you had that amazing game against the Oilers, then the loss to the Sabres, a very I'm going to call it boring game against the Avs, and then St. Patty's weekend you got I thought a really decent win over the Hurricanes. Like that one was a pretty much they saw this as a team in the one of those contenders for the Stanley Cup. We got to show up against them, and they certainly did. Like that to me, out of all the games in that stretch where you're gone, that Hurricanes one was by far their best one.
Yeah, it's that was a game that was probably just a big measuring stick game. Like where do we stack against the top teams in the East? Obviously, the Bostons and Tampas are in that conversation, but so's the Carolina Hurricanes, who I believe at this time are still number one in their division, if not second to Jersey, but they're right there, could very well win the division and could be an opponent for the Maple Leafs at some point in the playoffs if both teams go on a run. So I'd imagine that game, held a lot of weight and coming away with the victory is always nice. And then, yeah, you mentioned it. I got a chance to watch a little bit of the Sens game at the very least. And, it was the Matt Murray show. We weren't sure, like jokingly, weren't sure if he was going to play in that game just based on what had happened the 2 times prior. He was supposed to start against the Ottawa Senators earlier this year, but, he did start. He played very well, I might add. Had a couple of bad bounces go against him. So like the 4 goals, I didn't think necessarily was indicative on how well he played. He was tested a lot, was 52 shots plus 9 rounds of a shootout. So, faced 60 pucks ish in that game. So, and came away with the W after all that. So I thought that it was great. The other thing that it appears that Hart level Austin Matthews is back. Dave, is this true?
Did I leave that part out? Did I leave out the part where Austin Matthews? It was revealed that it was a little bit of a hand boo-boo that was giving him some trouble during the season, and now, he's back to looking like Hart. I wouldn't say back to being completely, but he is looking very much like he's getting back to being that Hart level player. And good on Jonas Siegel for cracking the mystery there. We kind of assumed that something wasn't right there.
Yeah.
And we never really heard anything. And I mean, I'll give credit to Matthews for disclosing that, because some players don't like disclosing those sort of issues that they're dealing with.
Was it the hand or the wrist? Like, it wasn't a re-aggravation of his wrist surgery he had last year, was it?
No, it was his hand that was the
Okay.
problem. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It
Gotcha.
was a hand injury that hampered him this season. It didn't really, it was just like one of those like bumps and bruises, but that was the one that was giving him the most trouble.
So Matthews is back on track, and to me that was kind of priority number one. Like when I left, I was thinking to myself, this guy's got to get going here because it's almost go time, and he's been rather quiet for the most of the season to his standards. I mean, still having a good season as like a if he was a regular NHLer, but he's not. He's a superstar, and he was having a down year by his standards that he set for himself. So him getting back on track, that's big for this team. And Morgan Rielly is the other name that I kept reading about and seeing tweets about saying Morgan Rielly's game is starting to improve. Is this also true, or is this false information that I've been gathering, Dave?
Well, he's starting to put the puck in the net, which is what he's being paid to do. Like, not always scoring, but getting those offensive chances and getting those points. But I think his best game was the one against the Avalanche. It was a very tight defensive matchup, and he played probably his best defensive game I have seen him play all season. And the offense and him scoring in a few games, and starting to really get that shot, and having the confidence. I think the big one was having the confidence to take those offensive opportunities to go down. I think there was someone on the Discord that said, "Oh, he looked good on the left wing." There was one chance he had where he skated in as a wing, looked like he was a winger, and he scored. And I kind of laughed, and I'm just like, "Yeah, but his defense has come along." Like that was probably this week was probably the best week that I think Morgan Rielly has had this season for sure.
And it looks like they're putting him in position to succeed though,
Yeah.
because I did go and take a look, and in the week and a half that I was gone, or since pretty well, I think when I looked at the numbers, I may have even been looking all the way back to the trade deadline, which is less than a week difference anyways.
Yeah.
No defenseman had fewer defensive zone starts than Morgan Rielly. So they're making sure that when they do put him out there, he's in favorable matchups, either in the neutral zone or preferably in the offensive side of the ice. And his minutes have gone down a little bit. And they're just making sure that they can try and rebuild his confidence by putting him in those favorable positions. You could call it, coddling, or you could call it what's the word I'm looking for here? Sheltering, right? The
Yeah.
sheltered minutes, which, it's not wouldn't be wrong to say, I think, when you look at the way that they are using him. But I think just to get his confidence back, it may have been necessary to do so. And then hopefully he's kind of back to being, the Mo of old, the guy who scored 20 goals 3 years ago, and the guy who has confidence with the puck, breaking out of his own end and distributing it up to the big boys up top and allowing them to do their thing. So it's nice to hear that he seems to be looking like he's gaining, his swagger back a little bit, and hopefully it continues through to the playoffs, because we got 13 games left. That's it, 13 games to
Yeah.
get things sorted out, and there's still like so much line juggling that's been going on. And I just go and I took a look at the lines from all the games that I missed, and I'm like, geez Louise, we've had probably like 10 different D pairings, and probably 10 or so different forward groupings as well, since the 6 games that I missed when I went on vacation or so. So um lots of things to still be determined in the final 13 games, I guess we could say. One of which will be against the New York Islanders, which will be Tuesday night. The Leafs heading back onto the island. Pierre Engvall hosting his team, a little bit of a revenge game. John Tavares goes back onto the island. That's always a hostile crowd for him. So we'll kind of tee up that game. We got some practice updates from Monday as well that we should get into on the other side. So all that more coming up on the show. But first, Dave, have a word from one of our show sponsors.
Yes, and today's show episode is brought to you by a product that I use literally every day, AG1 by Athletic Greens. Maybe you're like me, you want to be healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done. That's no longer the case with AG1. With one delicious scoop in a cup of water every day, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy recovery, focus, aging, all of those things. It can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach. AG1 costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition to make it easy. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. I'm happy to be back, Dave. I'm happy to be back after
Happy to have you
spending
back.
a little bit of time away. And it is funny because when you miss a chunk of time, and like I was on a boat and you've been on cruises, like you don't really know what's going on in civilization. I kind of unplugged for a little bit there. Like I didn't end up buying the internet package. I would go and kind of tether into the one that like one my parents got for work purposes at night when I would just check the scores. So I was pretty much relegated to just checking box scores at the end of the night. So I didn't get a chance to look at a whole lot. But like I said, there seems to be some different things that are happening in practice, some things that have gone on over the course of the last 10 days or so. And one of the things that I had missed and read about was Noel Chari's injury that he sustained Friday night. Didn't play the game on Saturday, but did return to practice on Monday and looks like he will play against the New York Islanders. So crisis averted there. So Noel Chari is okay. A little bit more of a suspect situation with TJ Brodie, however, who was not at practice today. And it came out after Sheldon Keefe said, he sat out today, took a blocked shot against the Ottawa Senators, missed practice. It'll be a game time decision against the Islanders in the game later tonight. So, a TJ Brodie injury is not what this team needs right now. Definitely not what this team needs.
No, I'll say that I didn't know. I couldn't pinpoint when exactly this block shot occurred. There were a lot of shots on that in the game, so try to pinpoint when exactly the block shot happened. I couldn't really figure it out, but yeah, because like TJ Brodie, we know he's been the constant. He's been the guy that's kind of kept everything even keel. I guess this is why you have 8 potential NHL defensemen that you could put into the lineup if someone's banged up. Like, on Saturday, they didn't play Mark Giordano on the back-to-back. They gave Gustafsson wasn't in. Like they have that luxury now that they didn't have in past years. So I would say that if Brodie is nowhere close to being, if Brodie is dealing with anything lingering, let him have the game off. And Sheldon Keefe has said he wants to get the defenseman going. 11-7 has been a very dominant conversation the last little while because Sheldon Keefe has been wanting to keep the defenseman kind of going. He didn't want them sitting for too long. Well, easiest way to not keep guys sitting is also not playing guys when they're not 100% either.
Yeah. Although TJ Brodie's a different beast. Like,
Oh yeah, you can't replace the
if
TJ Brodie easily.
that's the problem, right? Like literally, I think any other defenseman, not that they're replaceable, but I think you could get by with them out of the lineup and guys can fill in enough. I look at TJ Brodie and what he brings to the team, and they don't have another TJ Brodie, right? I think that's kind of somewhat is the issue. Like he's such a safety blanket on the back end. He's got a good first pass who can break the puck out, but he's just stellar defensively all the time. Wins a lot of one-on-one battles, and he's just someone who's really smart and is easy to play with, and he's often the guy who, oh, this guy's not playing well. Morgan Riley's struggling. Well, let's put him back with TJ Brodie and get him going, get his confidence up. What's that? Justin Hall's not playing well. All right, let's chuck TJ Brodie back on that pairing. What we want Jake McCabe to acclimate himself more easily into this lineup. Okay, well, let's chuck him with TJ Brodie and allow that to happen. So, hopefully this is just, it is a day to day thing. It's not expected to be anything serious, but definitely you don't like to see that name in particular on the blue line to be associated and affiliated with the injury report, and the fact that he missed practice today and is a game time decision against the Islanders. You don't love to see it, obviously. So definitely something to track throughout the day to see if TJ Brodie does get in practice. However, Eric Gustafsson did take his place alongside Morgan Riley. So you got Gustafsson and Mo as a pairing. McCabe and Liljegren gets another shot, and then Giordano and Justin Hall were the third pair at practice today. But I want to look at that Riley and Gustafsson pairing. Like, is that something you think you feel comfortable with? Because I don't know how comfortable I feel about those two on the ice together at the same time.
Sorry, while I get a little bit of that regurgitation in my chest, hearing a Morgan Riley, Eric Gustafsson pairing when none of those guys really like to play a lot of defense.
Oh,
That like that to me screams like placeholder Gustafsson for Brodie. I like you're gonna really play Gustafsson over Shen in that situation. Like, are we like, is that what's gonna happen there? I don't know. Again, is this Sheldon Keefe again saying I don't want to keep Eric Gustafsson out of the lineup too long? But yeah, that wouldn't be a great pairing, especially on the road where you don't get to dictate matchups. And the Islanders will definitely look at that pairing and see, okay, let's see what we can do to expose this a little bit.
Yeah, the good thing is, like, the Islanders, not the most offensively gifted team, so there's
No.
not really a chance for them to exploit Toronto a whole lot. Like, yeah, Bo Horvat's added a lot to that team. Like, Barzell's out, so he's not in that game. Wallstrom's not going to be in the game either. So, we'll see what happens in this one, obviously. But hopefully TJ Brodie is good to play. If not, yeah, it will be interesting to see who ends up getting the assignment next to Morgan Riley, whether it's Gustafsson like he did in practice today, or if it's Luke Shen who might get in there. Maybe Connor Timmins, who was back, in a practice today with no Brodie, so he was skating as the 8th defenseman once again. So maybe he gets an opportunity at some point here, but nonetheless, hopefully nothing's wrong and TJ Brodie can play in that game alongside Morgan Riley and continue to allow Riley to excel and get back to what he needs to be. The other thing coming out of practice today, Ilya Samsonov expected to start tomorrow. However, Joseph Wall remains with the team because Samsonov wife still expecting a child at some point here. And well, if she pops out a baby at some point, he will have to depart for fatherly duties, in which they'll have that third goaltender kind of hanging around, and he'll either most likely back up, I would assume, Matt Murray in that case if Samsonov can't go, but he is the projected starter. I do want to ask you, though, about Matt Murray's game the other night, since we're on the topic of goaltenders, and we haven't really broken down that game yet from Ottawa, but, he was great. And the fact that he played and started the game, finished the game, and got the win, and did it pretty convincingly. Just he had to. He was the best player on the ice probably for Toronto, not named Matthews and Yarncroc, but probably was still the best player on the ice. How big do you think that was for him and his confidence moving forward? Just playing that game and finishing it, and ultimately just like getting the win.
Yeah, it's funny because like Sheldon Keefe said, like Matt Murray doesn't need confidence, and I'm like, okay, you can say that. You're trying to say that your goaltender isn't dealing with any confidence issues, but like let's be honest here. When you see how he's like performed in the other two games, like not the best. Like you would expect a little bit more out of him. Like that game, that's the Matt Murray that you are going to need if he's called upon in the playoffs. And I say if because I think you see how Samsonov has been playing. It should be clear that he is the game one starter in the playoffs right now, just based on what he's been doing. And I think for Murray, you need to at least push in some way to show that you can make it a conversation. I know it's going to be a conversation regardless. Even if Matt Murray, you know, isn't playing the best, people are going to always have that conversation because of the Leafs' faith in Matt Murray. But that game against the Senators, yeah, like the Leafs at times should not have been in that game because the Senators were on them right from the start and right until the end, even overtime. Like Murray got lucky a little bit, but he was also like really good. So I know that a lot of people have had their jokes about Matt Murray, have had their issues with Matt Murray, but at the end of the day, if you have both Murray and Samsonov playing this well, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is. And I was looking at the numbers today. Jonas Siegel in The Athletic puts out a Monday morning Leaf report. And, he was just talking about the consistency in goal. And, it's just been, they've had above league average goaltending each and every month of the season. There hasn't been a single month where the Maple Leafs goaltending has been average or worse. Every single month, it's been better than average. And what did we say coming into the year? If they can get average to slightly above average goaltending, this team could do some damage. And it's exactly what they're getting out of Samsonov. And when healthy, Matt Murray, Joseph Wall's given them good games. Even Eric Shalgren has given them, some good games in the 10 or so starts that he's had this year. So goaltending, although it's like been a big question mark all season long, it's been fairly stable. I think is fair to say. I think they're what third in the NHL in goals against like per 60. Like it's pretty good. Like when you look at their numbers, the goaltending numbers.
Yeah, and when you look at, you know, when you consider that everybody was saying that the Leafs goaltending could be the issue when it comes to the season, and Kyle Dubas is hedging his bets on Samsonov, who needed to rebound after a pretty poor season in Washington, and you have Murray, who hasn't been able to stay healthy, and his play was pretty mediocre in Ottawa, and everybody was concerned about that. And yet that has probably been the least concerning part of the Leaf season is their goaltending, because there hasn't been a stretch like last year where you couldn't pick a starter to go in that. Like there was just the Leafs haven't had to deal with that. Knock on wood, they hope you don't have to deal with that between now and the end of the season, because Tampa's still within striking distance. And I think for both goalies, maybe this competition will bring out the best of them. It certainly brought the best out of Samsonov. Like he's looked his best in a really long time. So
Arguably his entire career.
yeah, I was saying the entire career. Like if I don't know if I've ever seen him look this good when he was in Washington, because I don't think he's ever seen this opportunity to really just be that comfortable. And you know, the Leafs have given him every opportunity now to resurrect his career, and he's taken advantage of it.
100%. He's had a 913 or better save percentage in each and every month this season. The league average is like 904. Now, like, so he's been
Crazy.
well above average. And if you look at their team statistics from a goaltending perspective at 5-on-5, in terms of save percentage, they've got a 923 save percentage, which is good for sixth in the entire NHL. You look at high danger save percentage, which was something that they were awful in last year. One of the worst when you look at both Mrazek and mainly Jack Campbell, who had like literally the worst high danger save percentage in the league. They're second in the NHL with an 875, trailing only the Boston Bruins in that category. And then when you look at goals against per 60, not expected, but actual goals allowed, 2.15 goals against per 60 at 5-on-5, which is fourth in the National Hockey League. And that is about 4/10 of a goal less than expected. So they're performing above expectation, which means they're performing above league average, which is exactly what we're talking about and exactly what the goaltending kind of needs to be for Toronto. And they're giving it to him, whether, again, it's Samsonov, whether it's Murray, Wall, Shalgren, whomever it may be. We'll see who starts in this game against the Islanders. But if there's one thing that I do know is I think I got confidence in whoever does go can give you a pretty good showing against a team that doesn't score a whole lot of goals. Anyway, why don't we take one more quick break, Dave? We'll come back and we'll kind of tee up that game, Islanders and Leafs tonight down on Long Island. But before we get into all that, let me tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors, and that's our good friends over at Built Bar. You're looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories, you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. I know that my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. And if you're like me and you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious. You won't think that they're good for you. They're perfect for that New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, which is my personal favorite, coconut almond, so many great ones. I'm really not sure how Built does it, but all these bars taste like they're candy bars while maintaining amazing macros. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get yourself a box of Built Bars. For years, we've been talking about ordering them online at Built.com. You can still do that, but you can also now get them at your local Walmart or your Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk into the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick it up in 4-box cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs, whichever flavor you want to enjoy. So remember to do that. Or again, go to builtbar.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON15, and you'll get 15% off your next order at built.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We got a game tonight, Leafs and Islanders. It's the first game that I will be watching from start to finish since March 5th, I think. They had like a Saturday, March 5th, I believe, is the last time that I actually watched a game from start to finish, Dave. So I'm stoked. I'm excited for it tonight. It's a pretty important game for the Islanders too. So you got to think that they'll be going all out. Like at this point, every point's really important for them as they battle for a playoff spot. They got the Panthers right on their heels. They're battling with Pittsburgh for that final wild card spot, or the final 2 spots rather. So this is going to be a big one for the Islanders, and obviously Toronto looking to continue their winning ways and try and get themselves home ice advantage. And Samsonov likely to start unless baby comes ahead, gets a road start. So, they're going to want to play well for him to try and get his confidence high while playing on the road. Because as we know, those road splits have been a little wonky all season long. So him getting a road start is also very important. So what are you expecting out of tonight's game?
I think it's going to be a slow game. I think, you look at the Islanders play, they're not exactly lighting things up offensively. And the Leafs haven't. It's funny, like the Leafs have had their moments offensively, but because of all the line juggling, all the things that they've been doing, it's been a little tough offensively for this Leafs team. And so I'm wondering if that continues. I feels like they're better scoring on the road than they have been at home too, which is an interesting trend for the Leafs here. But right now, the Islanders are coming back from that West Coast, that California swing. So, and right now you got they're in a 3-way battle right now for that wild card spot. I know they're technically owning the top spot, but Florida's right there, Pittsburgh's right there. They got a lot to play for. It's gonna be the Leafs have had to play a lot of teams who are kind of, I wouldn't say desperate, but there's like a bit more of an urgency to what's on the line for them. Ottawa, they're trying to stay alive. You looked at Colorado, They're trying to make sure that they don't fall down in the standings there. So it's going to be a very interesting game. There's a lot. There's. I know some people are going to say it's a random Leafs Islanders. Is not a whole lot of juicy storylines. I still think it's gonna be a very interesting battle.
Well, I mean, you've got, a pretty important player playing his former team.
Yes, Mike's gonna shed a tear when he sees Pierre Engvall skate down like he normally does.
How is Pierre Engvall the first player you think about when I say that? You've got John Tavares, who used to be the captain of that organization.
Wow. Yes, I know. I
And
was trying to
Pierre
bring in. I was trying to
Engvall,
keep your feelings. I was trying to keep your feelings in mind here
you
because I
know,
know,
you knew I was talking about Pierre Engvall.
of course.
Yeah, I mean, like Engvall, it's going to be an opportunity, I guess, for him to show up, and typically we do see the old revenge goal come through from
Mhm.
former Maple Leafs. So he's going to be an interesting player that I'll be keeping an eye on tonight. And not that I'm rooting for him to score against the Maple Leafs, but what I will say is if he does happen to score and he has a really good game and he's generating a lot of chances and he's playing with an active stick and he's doing the things that I've always talked glowingly about in his game, the details, and helps him get a win. I'm gonna talk about it the next day. You better damn believe I'll be talking about it the next day. But yeah, so Pierre Engvall, that's obviously a storyline that we're going to be watching. The way that he looks against his former team, he'll have some money on the board in that game. And then is it played out now, the John Tavares returning to the island? Like, does he still get booze for
Oh
the first, like, the whole game? Like, I don't think it's the whole game anymore. I think maybe like when they first announced him, he gets some booze. I don't think it's nearly what it was a couple of years ago, though.
No, I don't think so. Like it still stings. I no doubt it probably still stings with a lot of the fans there, but yeah, it's never going to be to that point where they're throwing those toy stuffed snakes or whatever that was in his first game back. Like I think that sort of idea has worn off. I mean, it's not like the Islanders have been in the playoffs since he's left. It's not like the team has completely gone down the gutter since he's left. So I think that's kind of helped soften the blow a little bit. But yeah, I expect booze anyways in this game, and I hope John Tavares also continues to play well against his former team because he's had some big games against the Islanders lately too.
Yeah, he certainly has. So he'll look to have a good game. One of the interesting quotes coming out of practice, another storyline that I guess we'll be following in the forward hemisphere, I suppose we'll call it, of this team. Like, we've talked about the goaltending, we've talked about the blue line. We haven't talked about what to expect up front from the Maple Leafs yet. For tonight's game, but there's an interesting comment from Sheldon Keefe about William Nylander, and basically just saying how he hasn't quite gotten, he hasn't looked the way that he did in the past. And I'm gonna actually find the quote and I'm gonna pull it up so I don't misquote him. But essentially, he says he's looking for more out of him. Essentially, like, again, you're someone who's been watching these games more closely the last little bit. Is his play really kind of dipped here the last few games, Dave?
It's funny because yeah, he hasn't been that dominant Nylander, I would say, where he's controlling play and he's playing with pace. Like he had a really nice goal against the Sabres that gave the Leafs a chance to maybe come back in that game. And I'm like, okay, that's the Willie that shows up in those big moments. But it's been kind of, you know, hasn't been there consistently enough. He hasn't looked that great in terms of, offensively just putting himself in those like danger areas to go and get those chances. His shot hasn't really been there either. Um, I know he's playing right now with Sam Lafferty, so like he's not playing with great offensively talented players, but at the same time, he needs to be challenged. I think this is what it's coming down to is um the Sheldon Keefe is seeing that decline and he's like, nah, nah. this isn't happening. Like, we need to get this guy going. And I think that's good that Sheldon Keefe recognizes it and is cognizant of it, and not just lazily saying, all right, we're gonna put this guy back with Matthews. It's like, no, we're gonna keep him on that third line, and he's gonna have to work his way out of it. And I think I like that from Sheldon.
He wants him to drive the line, right? He
Yeah.
wants him to have the puck as much as possible and have the play drive through him. So he'll be on a line again with Lafferty and Bobby McMahon, if it remains the way it was at practice, which I assume it will. Bunting, Tavares, and Marner remain together, and then Kerfoot, Matthews, and Calle Yarncroc also will be together, with the fourth line being Zach Aston-Reese, Camp, and Achari getting back into the mix, which means we might not see an 11-7 situation, but we'll see what happens there when it comes to the lineup. But back to the Nylander quote, I do have it here. Sheldon Keefe says he's not seeing enough from him. Says, quote, "There's a lot more perimeter, a lot more getting rid of the puck. I want him to hang on to it. I want him to challenge. I want to see him. I want him to be on the attack, and I want to see lots of pace. That's when he's at his best." And then Keefe on putting Nylander with Lafferty and McMahon, playing him more with guys who are going to skate and move their feet. He can. There's a spelling error. I think it's supposed to say so that he can be the guy that really drives things. That's the idea. So, yeah. So that's Keefe's philosophy on that line, and his theory on needing to get more out of William Nylander. And it seems like once a quarter he gets a little kick in the ass from Sheldon Keefe. And Nylander's told us before that he kind of likes that little wake up call, and this is one for him. Another interesting quote, I suppose, that was also kind of came out of practice today in reference to the lineup, is the fact that he's putting Marner and Tavares back together strictly because he's not liking what he's seeing out of John Tavares in terms of a lack of offensive production. The guy's got no shots at 5-on-5 in his last 3 games, and just 2 in his last 5 games at 5-on-5. So putting Marner back with him, trying to get his confidence back and try and give him a spark as well for the final stretch. And that's what the forward lines will shake out as. So, there's, like I said, 13 games to go and still a lot to figure out. I don't know whether I'm concerned by the fact that we still don't have things figured out yet, or if I feel like once O'Reilly comes back, things will kind of fall into place pretty quickly. I'm still wrestling with how I feel about it, I suppose. But I'm assuming we'll find out soon, Dave, the answers to those questions. No?
Yeah, I do think so. They don't have a lot of games, as you mentioned. They don't have a lot of games left. They gotta. I know Sheldon Keefe likes to experiment, but eventually, and I was listening. I think it was Justin Bourne that said this. He's like, "You can experiment, but at some point, you got to get the full meal together. You got to get the meal together. You got to start cooking, right? You can't just throw whatever you want together and hope it sticks. At some point, you got to stick with something, because playoffs comes around. You don't want guys to be out of sync, because nothing is solidified for the lineup, especially."
Yeah, I talked about it with Mike Johnson on Leafs Lunch today and on my show, and I said, at what points do you want to see that playoff roster, that lineup that that can gain chemistry together? And he essentially said, I mean, when does Ryan O'Reilly get back? Like, you have until O'Reilly gets back to kind of still tinker with things, because that's a big hole in the middle of your lineup. But once he gets back in the final few games there, final 5-6 games, then it's go time. Right. So that first week of April, I think, is kind of when we're expecting him, first or second week of April. So for the final 5-6 games of the season, that is, I guess, really when he should settle things in, and we should get a much better understanding of how he views this lineup come game 1 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we know it's going to be them. We don't know exactly where it's going to be played as of now. It's likely to be in Toronto. But, they still got to win some games here to ensure that happens. And they can try and keep going on that path tonight when they take on the New York Islanders. Puck drop will be at 7:30. So a 7:30 start on the island. that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast and receive daily Maple Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Make sure that you also subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. Leave a like and a comment down below as well. We're back for another episode tomorrow. We will, I guess, hope that there's a nice victory to chat about, but we'll definitely dissect the game tomorrow night against the New York Islanders and get back to you guys after that one. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.